Hey guys, Joe here, back to the Word, and in this video, doing a book review of this work right here, Reading the Bible with 10 Church Fathers by Gerald Bray, How to Interpret, Teach, and Preach Like the Early Christians, published by Baker Books. They sent me this copy for review, and I want to share my thoughts from the time I've spent with it with you guys in this video. As with all of my review videos, you can hop ahead by the timestamp to the section that most interests you if you desire to do so. Before we get into my normal review segments for these book reviews, I want to say up front that this is not the first book Dr. Gerald Bray has actually written on this topic of how the church fathers read their Bibles. So in 2022, he published a book with Lexham Press titled How the Church Fathers Read the Bible, a Short Introduction. So there is the cover right there. It was about 184 pages long and had 6 chapters that, along with interpretation issues, covered how church fathers from that period read different key passages of Scripture from Genesis to Revelation. At least that's what it says its contents were, according to the description by the publisher. This book from Dr. Bray, it covers many of the same topics, but is in a completely different book and comes at the same topic from a different angle. So that first book coming more from the interpretation philosophy. A critique online I saw was that people said, well, you kind of see, you don't know where you're reading Bray and where you're reading the church fathers because he's trying to put together how the early church interpreted the Bible. This book, released from Baker Books, is actually coming at a different angle with the same topics. It's coming more specifically looking at the church fathers and how they read the Bible instead of more of the interpretation and then using the church fathers. And so I think this is covering some of the same material, but from a really good approach, focusing more on the church fathers, who they are and how they read the Bible, and some of the good lessons we can take from those church fathers and how they read their Bibles. And so that's just kind of, I wanted you to know at the outset, he's written 2 books on this kind of topic. This is an entirely different one with 10 chapters based on the church fathers and how they read their Bibles instead of the other one that came out a few years ago. So with that clarity on the table, let's get into the normal review segment, specifically on this work, Reading the Bible with 10 Church Fathers from Baker Books and Dr. Gerald Bray. So first up, who is this book for specifically? This book is for any Christian curious about the patristic church fathers, the first era of the church after the disciples and apostles had passed away. And so people who are interested in how the early church fathers, the patristic church fathers, read, interpreted, taught, and preached the Bible will enjoy reading this book from Dr. Bray. It really is an introduction to that period of church history and how their teachings from the Bible shaped the early church in less than 200 pages. So we might want to cover really quick who were the church fathers. For those who are curious, the term church fathers is used to describe the men who led the church in the first few hundred years after the death of the apostles. By AD 100, the apostles and their associates had passed away, and a new generation had taken over the leadership of the church. They did not call themselves fathers of the church, but we call them that today because as a group, they were the first to interpret the Bible and formulate the main doctrines of Christianity as we know them today. So in other words, all Christians today can see something of ourselves and what we teach and believe in the church fathers. So moving into my normal segment for review again, who wrote this book specifically? It was written by Dr. Gerald Bray, and he is the research professor of divinity at Beeson Divinity School. He has also authored many books, including A History of Christian Theology, Augustine on the Christian Life, and the History of Christianity in Britain and Ireland. So, moving into what stands out about this work specifically, covering 10 church fathers, how they read their Bible, how we can learn from that, in just under 200 pages. So first, Dr. Bray says in the first section of the book, which sets up the rest, that this book is an introduction to the Church Fathers, not a definitive or encyclopedic study of them. So he's not trying to say everything, just key things about key Church Fathers and how they read, interpreted, and studied and preached from the Bible. So choosing only 10 fathers to look at is really restricting and hard, and you could argue over different things, but these 10 have been picked because of the contribution those particular fathers have made to the interpretation of the Bible, contributions that still impact how the church at large today reads, interprets, teaches, and preaches the Bible. And so that's why he has chosen these 10. So which 10 has he picked? He picked Justin Martyr. He has a chapter on Origen, a chapter on Gregory of Nyssa, a chapter on Ambrosiaster, John Chrysostom, Theodore of Mosthenia, Jerome, Augustine of Hippo, Cyril of Alexandria, and Theodoret of Cyrus to end. So a chapter on each one of those. So what are the contents of each chapter? So we know those are the 10 fathers. How has he formatted these chapters? So each chapter opens with an introduction to that church father with necessary history, figures, and controversies covered. He calls that his who was this or who was he section. Then he moves into how that church father read the Bible. Did he read the Greek Septuagint? Some of them read the Latin Vulgate. Those sorts of things are discussed and how they kind of did and studied the Bible in their time. Then he gets to other unique contributions to reading the Bible, interpretation, teaching, or preaching by that church father. The good, he talks about some of the bad sometimes, but he focuses primarily on the good things about how they read, interpreted, and taught the Bible and how we can learn from them. And towards the end of the chapter, he usually does a kind of summary and application. Here's the good we can learn from, and here's some of the ways we can kind of stay away from this church father in some of these areas. As they were pioneers and doing this for the first time, as these couple generations, they made mistakes. And so we can learn from those mistakes, but we can also learn about the good things that they did in pursuing the Lord, formulating doctrine, and those sorts of things. And then each chapter ends with reflection questions. Those are really good. And then also some further reading suggestions if you want to get into that church father more. Then you get to the end of the book. There's a really nice conclusion. And so it's about a 5-page conclusion that wraps up the content of the book in a way that shows how the truths of Christ were carried forward into other generations of Christians, into the church at large over generations. So he says at the very beginning of that conclusion that Jesus says in John 5:39, the scriptures bear witness about me. The first followers of Jesus and the church fathers took that to heart, and with the Bible as their guide to spiritual truth, they found the portrait of Jesus Christ and how God through Christ was calling them to live and what to believe, and they have passed those things down to us. And so this is an exciting time of church history to learn about and to look at these figures that are not perfect, but do have lessons to teach us for today. So right there is the end of the review. Some kind of further reflections is I have really enjoyed my time with this book from Dr. Gerald Bray. And so I'm going to be doing a longer reflect and dive into those 10 church fathers and briefly state who they are and what we can learn about how they read, interpreted, preached the Bible. And so that video is going to be out in the near future on my channel. So once it is, the video link will be in the description below. So expand that description. If the link is there, it's ready to go. If not, it's going to be out real soon for you guys. Also, if you get this book and you really love it from Baker Books and you want more, I would suggest these 2 other resources that I have found personally helpful. So first up, if you want Dr. Gerald Bray and you want more of him, you need to get this book right here, God Has Spoken, A History of Christian Theology. This is the old edition that was done by Crossway. He goes through all of church history here from kind of a doctrinal, developmental perspective. So Dr. Gerald Bray is really good in this book. He has recently kind of changed the title, but there's a second edition out, so you can easily find that on Crossway's website. Just search Dr. Gerald Bray. You'll see something that looks pretty close to this. Its cover is blue, and it's the history of Christian theology. So you want more from him after you read this one, go pick up this book from Crossway that's out in a second edition with a bit different cover, but the contents are the same. If you want more from the theology side of things, here's a resource I have really loved that gets into historical theology, but from the theology perspective, and that's this book right here, Historical Theology for the Church, edited by Jason Dusing and Nathan Finn by B&H Academic. And so this goes through all eras of church history, the patristic era, the medieval era, the Reformation era, and the modern era. And it talks about how different key doctrines were developed and put together over those different eras of church history. And then all of those sections actually end with case studies that get more into the specific characters or people, so you're in Christology for the patristic era, then you're going to get kind of a case study on Athanasius against the world for Christology, that Jesus Christ is fully man and fully God sort of thing. So that's a great resource. Dr. Bray has written a really great resource, but the on-ramp to both of those for some of us might be this book right here that we're reviewing in this video, Reading the Bible with 10 Church Fathers from Dr. Gerald Bray, How to Interpret, Teach, and Preach Like the Early Christians. So if you get this book, you love the Church Fathers, you want to comment your thoughts, questions, leave those below in the video comments. You want more from my channel, reviews, book content, Bible reading content, please subscribe because I put out videos to help you read the Bible, good books, and have conversations that truly matter, like the things we've talked about in this video. So with that, that's all I have planned for this review video. Until next time, continue to read, treasure, follow the word. God bless, and I'll see you guys soon.